Hello everyone and welcome to this session. My name is Dr. Virginie Fege. I'm the Cocoa Swallow and Shoot Program Manager at WCF. I'm going to moderate this session on what a cocoa disease, a cocoa virus is teaching us on sustainability. The cocoa swallow and shoot virus disease is a very serious threat in West Africa. Thousands of hectares are being infected and devastated by the disease, creating despair among the farmers. Research is gaining momentum to find how to eradicate the disease, and we have learned to detect and prevent the cocoa swallow and shoot virus. For instance, strategies to prevent CSSV include fighting deforestation, diversification, and agroforestry. In this session, we want to know if strategies to prevent CSSV promote greater cocoa sustainability overall. This session brings together scientists and decision makers from the public and the private sector, as well as a representative of a financial institution. We have a keynote followed by one single panel. Now, to get us started, I would like to introduce, it's my pleasure to introduce her. Our keynote speaker is Mrs. Jeanne Coulibaly Oyolola. She is an agricultural economist at the World Bank in Côte d'Ivoire. Her work at the bank includes the design and implementation of strategies to promote cocoa sustainability and to reduce deforestation. And prior to that, Jane worked for the ICRAF, the World Cocoa Agroforestry Center, as a climate change adaptation specialist. I know Jeanne very well. She's passionate by cocoa sustainability, and she's very talented. So join me to welcome Jeanne for our keynote today. Jeanne, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Virginie. I hope everybody can hear me. Is it okay? Okay, so good afternoon, good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure and a great honor to deliver this keynote. To start, I would like to emphasize how important it is for the World Bank to participate to this session on cocoa sustainability and the swallow and shoot, as our core mission is to fight against poverty and to promote shared prosperity. So any challenges that hamper farmers' well-being will unleash our determination to provide a better world to the poorest. In my presentation, I would like to emphasize on 4 key points. The first one is that the swallow and shoot is a danger for West African economies, both at a macroeconomic level, but also on the livelihoods of farmers. Second, the fight against the swallow and shoot is very complex in the context of climate change and deforestation. Third, the bank is engaged to support the government of Côte d'Ivoire to address this disease. And in the last point, there are gaps where more work is needed, but which give more opportunities for some actions. Needless to say that the swallow and shoot is a major threat to cocoa farming and farmers' well-being in West Africa. When the disease infects a plantation, we have a severe drop in yields and death of a plantation in less than 5 years, resulting in profound income losses for farmers and eventually deep poverty. At a macroeconomic level, this has enormous economic implications for West Africa, which provides 70% of the world cocoa production and hosts millions of households dependent on cocoa. For a country like Côte d'Ivoire, This is of tremendous economic importance as cocoa makes up 14% of GDP and provides 40% of export revenue. You see that if nothing is done, this is likely to lead to severe economic damage. We all remember how Ghana lost its position as a first world producer of cocoa because this disease contributed to that. And Ghana was surpassed by Côte d'Ivoire in 1978. In Côte d'Ivoire, the disease occurred in 1943 in the eastern part of the country, but has shifted to the western and southwestern parts of the country. And this is now threatening all the cocoa producing regions. And this is very worrisome when we know the weight that Côte d'Ivoire represents in the world supply of cocoa. The future of cocoa farming is becoming even more uncertain under climate change. And there is a study that was done by CIAT, the CGI institution, that revealed that under climate change, areas suitable to cocoa farming will shrink. And Côte d'Ivoire, it will be concentrated in the southwestern part of the country. By 2050, there is a quarter of the national production that will be located in areas unsuitable to cocoa farming. And a quarter of the domestic production is 500,000 tons. You see that the cost of inaction is huge, estimated at 3.5% of GDP, which is between 0.8 to 1.5 billion of USD per year. Besides climate change, there is also the challenge of deforestation. Deforestation exacerbates the effects of climate change, but deforestation also contributes to the expansion of the virus by the alteration of the natural ecosystem. Dear participants, the threat of the soil and shoot on cocoa sustainability, compounded by the challenge of deforestation and climate change, is of prime concern for the World Bank. No wonder we are supporting the government of Côte d'Ivoire, who is taking the lead in developing 2 integrated operations on cocoa sustainability and deforestation. And these operations include a prime focus on the fight against the soil and shoot. The activities that are articulated around the soil and shoot are as follows. First of all, this operation will support the government capacities to fight against the disease by implementing the national uprooting programs. It will also support the affected farmers by the soil and shoot. The second activity will be to support a world-class research, and this will include integrated pest management, epidemiological surveillance, and cocoa genomics. The third activity will consist in promoting a systemic approach to fight against the disease by having bundled interventions that can be implemented simultaneously. The fourth activity will be to upscale climate-smart cocoa system, and this with the support of the private sector. The last activity will consist of doing some analytical work in order to show cases of best practices that are very effective to prevent the soil and shoot. As we are embarking in these transformative operations, the critical needs to eradicate the disease compel us to ask at least the following set of questions. First, what's the state of knowledge on the soil and shoot? And this in terms of prevalence, variability, and the distribution of the virus. Second, how science and experience can be leveraged for the development of effective cocoa agroforestry models that can reduce the pressure of the soil and shoot. but are also economically sustainable for farmers. Third, how a landscape approach for cocoa sustainability can contribute to address more effectively the interlinked challenges of deforestation, soil and shoot, and climate change. Last, what type of public-private partnerships can control the disease? To conclude, given the serious threat of the soil and shoot on cocoa sustainability, all these questions boil down to the urgency of having a breakthrough in research and development, and to use also our collective key to unlock the eradication of the soil and shoot disease. That being said, I wish to thank WCF, the government, and all stakeholders for their commitment on having a sustainable cocoa sector free from the soil and shoot and with prosperous communities. I thank you again for the invitation, and I look forward to a discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeanne, for this excellent keynote. And I think all the audience will agree with me that you have really set the scene of our discussion today. So now we'll move to our panel. We have one single panel, and the discussion will focus on this simple question: how do we combat the cocoa soil and shoot virus disease in the context of climate change and biodiversity crisis? So our first panelist is Dr. Jean-Philippe Mareli. He is the Senior Director of Integrated Pest Management for Mars Wrigley. Jean-Philippe, welcome to the session. Please, can you tell us what is the state of knowledge about CSSV? We heard from Jeanne that we need to understand what is the prevalence, variability, and distribution. So what is the state of knowledge on this disease? And we also know that Mars is doing a very important work on research against CSSV. So can you also tell us a little bit more on your work? Thank you.
Thank you, Virginie. Well, first of all, thanks for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. We've been working on this virus for quite a few years, also along with WCF. So I'm really excited to show a few new things and some progress that we've done to fight this terrible disease. So I'm going to share a few slides. And let me know if you can all see it. So just to remind everyone, right? So I work for Mars. We are a 100-year-old company, and we really believe that the world we want today starts with how we do business today. It's important for us to, since cocoa is one of our main ingredients, to make sure that we have a very sustainable cocoa supply chain, right? And we do want to have our future generations to be able to keep eating chocolate. So that's why we really care about this. We've been working with partnerships, for decades, and we really think it's important to invest in research, and that's why we're doing so much research around this disease, all diseases, and including this cocoa soil and shoot. We are convinced that actually doing science will take us to a better future and also being able to grow more cocoa in less land. The cocoa is grown 18 degrees north and south of the equator. It's grown by 40 to 50 million cocoa farmers. But unfortunately, this area is also very prone to pests and diseases due to the hot and humid climate. The estimations by ICCO is that we lose around between 30 to 40% of cocoa to due to diseases, right? And this is huge, right? This represents billions of dollars every year. So up to now, the diseases are pretty contained in between the continents. So in Latin America, we have the sister species, witch's broom and frosty pod, that have caused many epidemics there. In West Africa, we have CSSD. And in Southeast Asia, we have a pest called cocoa pod borer and also a disease called vascular street dieback that's also limiting the production in that origin. The only one that's occurring worldwide is black pod, caused by Phytophthora. But in West Africa, we have a specific species of Phytophthora megakarya, that is actually more aggressive. But today we're going to concentrate on this terrible viral disease called cocoa swollen shoot disease. It's actually only found right now in West Africa, as I was mentioning. The symptoms, as you can see, are some red vein, leaf chlorosis, the stem swelling, sometimes root swelling as well. As Jean was saying, the tree can actually die between 3 to 4 years, depending on the susceptibility of the plant and also on the aggressivity of the virus of the species. And the only way we can really control this virus right now is by cutting down the farm and restarting from scratch. And that's why we're really worried. In terms of the biology of the virus, so it's transmitted by an insect called mealybugs, which are scale insects. It can have a long asymptomatic phase between 4 to 8 weeks, which makes the virus hard to detect when you don't have a tool like a molecular tool. You rely on basically visual symptoms. Up to now, the only way we could actually detect this virus was sending samples to a lab and doing some either ELISA or dot blot or PCR reaction, which was taking a long time to get results and also was quite expensive. And we have now developed a new in-field detection tool. And Sania Fambrio from Swiss Decode will talk about that because we developed that in partnership with them. And we can actually get a read on the status of the virus on the plant in less than 60 minutes in the field, which is a great breakthrough. So we're really proud about this. And one of the foundations of how we managed to develop this detection kit is to look at the diversity. So we worked very closely with different partners, like University of Arizona, CNRI in Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, the CRIG in Ghana, and ICRAF, of course, to actually determine the diversity of this virus. So this is the latest tree that we have. So as you can see, it's pretty complex, and that's why we call it now CSSV, as cocoa swollen shoot disease, because it's actually not caused by only one virus. It's caused by 10 different types of viruses. Up to now, we know that in Cote d'Ivoire, we mainly find 3. So this is the ones that are circled in solid circles. And in Ghana, we're still actually looking at the diversity where we just finished the sampling with Craig. And so I cannot tell you the full picture there, but we already know that we have the CSSV strain there present as well. So we think it's going to be a different picture than we have in Cote d'Ivoire. So we strongly believe that our way to control this disease, we may not be able to fully eradicate it, but at least live with it, is to have a strong integrated pest management program. And integrated pest management is based on 3 pillars: prevention, detection, and mitigation. So in terms of prevention, now that we have this tool of molecular detection, we can actually make sure that we have clean planting material from the get-go in the nurseries, which is very important. Most industries that have dealt with viruses, like the grape industry, have based their control in having a very strict program of clean planting material. The second one is barrier crops. So we already know a few, like coffee and oil palm and rubber, but along with the crop, we're actually identifying more trees, more species that can actually serve as phytosanitary barriers so that we can prevent the disease from coming into the farm. The second pillar is detection. And as I was mentioning, the CSSD detection kit is very essential for that. So now we can actually monitor the clonal and seed gardens, which is where we get the initial budroot from. And we also can monitor the rehabilitated farm. So we have developed a protocol to actually tell farmers and extension agents how to exactly do this. And finally, intervention, right? So right now the intervention, as I was mentioning, is only cutting down the plant. But if we follow all these previous steps, the prevention and detection, we believe that this cut and replant will actually be less harsh on the farmer because we will not have to cut down the whole farm, but we may need to cut all the few trees that have been detected as being sick. Of course, discarding also as well the plants in the nursery is essential, and that's also a way of controlling the spread. And finally, the mealybug control, and we're looking for less toxic insecticides to control the mealybug in the field and the nurseries. So Virginie, that's all for me. I just want to reiterate that Mars, is doing this really to put that in the public domain. We believe in collaborations, and we really want to incentivize others to really do research on CSSD, and that's why we're putting everything in the public domain and look for collaborations. And we believe, as Jen was saying, it's important to fight this virus. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean-Philippe. I remember our meeting at Lima We discussed CSSV during this ICCO meeting, so I know that you are really, really engaged in this fight against the virus. So I had a very simple question for you. If you can just take 1 minute to answer to that question. We know that since last year, we are facing the COVID-19. And one major concern about this disease is the appearance of variants that could overcome the vaccine barrier. So my question to you is, what is the likeliness for us to have the same problem, the same issue with CSSV, to face this new variant that will be more aggressive and destructive?
Yeah, thanks, Virginie. So unfortunately, viruses are pretty tricky organisms, and they do tend to recombine and generate new forms because they have a very simple genetic makeup, so they can mutate pretty rapidly. So, and we've actually already found plants that have co-infections of the 2 different species of the CSSV. So it's possible that those 2 different species could actually, hybridize and become a new one. So that's why it's important to keep monitoring and to keep sampling in the countries, because we don't think it's not a static picture. We could get new species and new variants appearing, and it's important to know that particularly for the detection, right? Because the detection that we have developed depends on the genomic sequences. So we need to be able to get those things early so we can adapt the detection methods. You're on mute, Vinny.
My apologize. So thank you so much, Jean-Philippe. Yeah, I was just wondering when we have those new variants, but hopefully the work we are doing will help us to really be not behind the virus, but a step ahead. So our next speaker that I would now like to introduce us is Mrs. Sanya Fabrizio. So Jean-Philippe is the one who introduced Sanya to WCF. So thank you, Jean-Philippe, for that. Sanya is the Director of Business Development for Swiss Deco, which is a Swiss organization. So Sanya, welcome to this panel. Please, can you tell us a few words about what your company is doing, who your company is, and what type of solutions are being developed to fight against the cocoa swollen shoot virus? Sanya, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Virginie, and thank you very much for inviting me to the session. It's a real pleasure to be here and to share also our work with you. I hope now you can see my screen. So very quickly to introduce the company. We've been founded in 2016. We are a Swiss company, Lausanne-based, with a vision to build trust along the food supply chain. Swiss Deco specializes in rapid food testing and certification. We support companies in their authenticity and traceability efforts, and that can be done across various matrices. We help them identify undeclared or undesired ingredients, viruses, contaminants, such as undeclared pork, for instance, in beef, or GMO corn, or maybe another example is A1 and A2 milk, for those who know the distinction. We obviously work with many more, but the reason why we are here today is our connection, as you just nicely introduced, that Virginie, with WCF, that started in 2018 when you introduced us to Jean-Philippe and his team. We adapted our proprietary technology to incorporate Mars's underlying research, some of which you've seen just in his preceding slides, and developed a new technical testing method for early detection of the swollen shoot virus. So what does that do? If I can just change the slide, there we go. The test does detect the swollen shoot virus in still asymptomatic leaves. And when we know that the plant can be affected, as Jean-Philippe said, up to 3 months without showing really the results in the leaf or symptoms in the leaf, or even up to 6 months before the swollen shoot actually starts, we have allowed, we kind of allowed the action to start and apply mitigation measures to curb the spread early on. The tool detects several viruses prevalent in Ivory Coast in one reaction. And with mutation of the virus and with the different strains that Jean-Philippe also showed, the test will be adaptable, and we can adjust that to country-specific or region-specific strains in the future. It is destined to be used by non-scientific staff. I think that's the main benefit of bringing it really to the field, because it's portable, it's easy and simple to use. It does return the results in an hour, as Jean-Philippe said. It does require a hand time on the sample preparation, about 5 minutes per leaf that is being sampled or tested. And then the device displays the outcome in approximately another 15 minutes of amplification. And the test results then can be geotagged. It can be analyzed the way we need them per intended use and application that we actually use that in. So obviously we show that to the real potential users. And what did they tell us about the tool and about the way to actually manipulate that? Back in July in Abidjan, we organized with Mars the focus groups where we showed the process of the sample preparation to farmers, both female and male, to agronomists, trainers in cooperatives, sustainability managers, exporters, representatives of the industry. And they told us that they believe that this is simple enough to be done by everyone, obviously with a bit of training, but nobody seemed to be saying, no, we can't do that. They told us also they want the test to be performed at the farm level, as they wish to know the outcome there and then when the sample is taken, even though that may mean that they will know that their farm might be condemned, but they prefer knowing so they can really embark on the plan B. And that plan B, they told us also that if the farm is indeed affected, they cannot go through that alone. That they need both financial and expert support and help to protect their livelihoods until the farm is again able to produce the crop sufficient to support the family. And I'm sure that answer to an important question like that will be addressed and given by the representatives of the government, because this is really the focus of understanding how we can really help livelihoods of people in the farm. So how can we bring that to become a toolbox for the CSSD mitigation, and when can it be used? To give you a quick status, the test is being validated as we speak in the Ivory Coast. Validation task force has been including the representatives of Conseil Café Cacao, Ministry of Agriculture, FIRCANA there, and that all has been guided by ICRAF and CNRA. We hope to hear the outcome and conclusion of the testing that is done on the flush leaves post the rainy season now in the next couple of months, which means if successful, which we very much hope so, we expect the tool to be available for use as of January or February next year. As to where we believe it could be used, and building on slides that Jean-Philippe just showed, it's really to map the CSS spread in various applications, to monitor the non-infected areas, but also remediated farms that could be reinfected again, certify the nurseries as virus-free, and help monitor seeds and clonal gardens for early detection of the virus spread. Again, given the important impact of the disease on the crop and the livelihoods of people, of the farmers, we are very excited to the prospects of working together with the industry members and everybody who is a stakeholder in the supply chain of cocoa, and really be part of the solution to mitigate the CSSD. So thank you very much for that, and I hope we can also bring our part toward the sustainable cocoa value chain.
Thank you, Sanya. I'm very excited to see how this tool will work, because we are looking for handheld kit that will be used directly by farmers. So thank you so much. We retain that the possible application of this tool will be the surveillance of non-infected farms and monitoring of remediated farms. So I will get back to you later with a question, because we really need to understand how this kind of tool can be used by farmers, how they can be the end users and not only the lab and the scientists. So I will get back to you. As we are running out of time, I want to introduce to you our next speaker, who is Mr. Fabrizio, we have Fabrizio and we have Fabrizio. So this is Fabrizio Arigoni, who is the head of plant science at Nestle. So as he will present what Nestle is doing, he will also answer to this question. We know that Nestle have actively participated in the development of the early detection tool, but we still know that there are a lot of challenges on the detection of the disease and all on how to cope with this disease. So what do you see as the key challenges and the field where areas of efforts should be concentrated? So the floor is yours. Please.
Thank you, Virginie. Can you hear me? Yes?
We can hear you.
Okay, so thank you for the introduction, Virginie. I think a lot has been said already by Jean-Philippe as introduction and by Dr. Coulibaly. So I here maybe as introduction, I just want to give you an overall sense of what we're doing as Nestle, as a company 150 years old. So we beat Mars on that. Just a joke, and we are what we're doing that could contribute in several aspects and several challenges on cocoa, and then I'll come back to what we focus on in terms of projects. So we develop a lot of competences around cocoa since many years, which goes from basic horticulture methods. We develop plant propagation technologies that we also share openly, and that goes from basic technologies to tissue culture. We maintain genetic diversity that I think is important for many aspects, and possibly also for aspects related to resistance of CSSD. We have expertise in agronomy, but also in sensory, in chemical characterization of cocoa. We do develop also genetic tools for quality control and disease characterization, and I'll come back to that in a minute. We have also, not directly related to the discussion today, expertise in fermentation. We do believe in strong network. I think we share with Mars the vision that we want to do things in collaboration with others. We want to be open and we want to share what we do, and in order that others can also benefit on it. And then, as I mentioned, we are developing now more and more beyond plant science, but we are also building much stronger into the agriculture, including agriculture of cocoa. So when we talk about projects, what we do, we have two main axes today working on cocoa. One is we work on the preservation of cocoa diversity with external partners, including international collection. We believe it's important to preserve the diversity of cocoa, and that is a real threat because of deforestation and other threats. So we are trying to help others and working with others by sharing the technology that we have developed in the past, whether on genetics, genomics, and so on. So that's one axis of research. And the other axis is on cocoa diseases, including CSSV. But I must say here, I'm far from being as far as Mars, for example, the work that Jean-Philippe presented. We are not that involved, although we've been, and Virginie, we have developed detection tools also together with WCF, which were more focused on PCR-based methods and quantitative methods, which I think are also important. And we focus today, again, trying to valorize the technologies that we master in tissue culture and detection. We are now trying to develop methodologies to get rid of the CSSV in specific infected clones. So the idea would be, especially for nurseries and for collections that may be infected with CSSDs, to develop technologies that we can maintain clone, continue propagating them, even if the mother clones are infected. So we're working on applying tissue cultures to get rid of the virus. So it's something that we started some time ago, and we struggled a bit in getting the infected material brought to our research centers outside of Côte d'Ivoire. So that's the challenge today. And then we also look at other diseases, but I think that's not the topic of today. But we're always interested, and we do most of our research in collaboration with other institutes. So you asked me, Virginie, about the challenges, where I see the challenges. I think there are different levels, but one challenge that I see really as important. I think this was raised also by Dr. Coulibaly and by Jean-Philippe, is in terms of better understanding the biology of the virus. That's certainly something. But beyond that, I think there's still a lot of question mark about the epidemiology and the spatial temporal dynamic of the virus. We still, I think we all agree that it's an important disease. We struggle, or at least I struggle to get numbers, because I don't think there is a systematic collection nationwide, whether in Côte d'Ivoire or in Ghana. And we also struggle to understand how the disease spreads, how to control it. Is it enough to cut one tree? Do you need to cut all the trees around, or all the trees on the plantation? And these are questions that are very important for the farmers to know. What do they do once they use fancy tools like Sanya has presented, which I think are a game changer? What do they do next? So I think, Virginie, that's something that I would see as something important, and I think it's also something that one entity cannot solve by itself. So I think here, again, in line with what Jean-Philippe has said, and the technology that has been developed by Sanya, but also the view that Dr. Coulibaly has presented before, I think we need to get all together to advance, to better understand the epidemiology, and then to see how do we fight the disease. And you were giving the example of the coronavirus. I think it's the same thing. It started by better understanding the epidemiology. It started by when we didn't have a vaccine. It was detect and isolate. That's what we need to do. And then possibly longer term, we need to find ways to fight the disease. We need to integrate also approaches like agroforestry and environmentally friendly approach to try to limit the spreading of the disease, and also to look at biologicals to fight the disease.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is a great transition to the second part of this panel. But I just want to emphasize on what you said about what they call for COVID. They say the 3T: trace, test, and treat. So we need this kind of strategy for the swollen shoot as well, but we all know that we don't have a cure yet. So our next speaker that I would like to introduce will take us out of the labs. We have the three speakers just share what is done in the lab, but it is also a common understanding that the human activities have altered by altering the climate and natural ecosystems, also impact the spread of the plant disease, including CSSV. So our next speaker, Dr. Ranjana Bhattacharjee. I'm sorry, Ranjana, your name is quite complicated. She is a renowned molecular breeder based at the International Institute of Tropical Agriculture, IITA, Ibadan. Ranjana is involved in the work on CSSV since years. So Ranjana, welcome to the panel. Please, can you tell us what means agroforestry in cocoa? And what are the effects of cocoa agroforestry in biodiversity conservation? And where are we with something that was highlighted? Where are we with the plant resistance? Do we have CSSV resistant varieties. So the floor is yours, Ranjana. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Virginie, and good morning, good evening, good afternoon to people all over. Thank you very much to WCF for providing me this opportunity. IITA is a non-profit CG Institute founded in 1967. So we are much younger, 53 years only. And it is headquartered in Nigeria with a lot of research stations all over Africa. So we have done some work with agroforestry and to how does it offer for biodiversity conservation and also control. But this is just the beginning of the epitome. So I think a lot needs to be still understood. But I will just share what we have found and also what other people are trying to find in how agroforestry can combat this disease. What happened? Why is it not moving? So cocoa agroforestry, the definition itself is like it's a production system that involves strategic integration in time and space of suitable and valuable non-cocoa tree species. And what it entails, it gives agronomic, economic, and environmental benefits. So there's a lot of questions that keeps popping up, like which species should we bring together? Yeah, there is always a threat and benefit to this. So we always have to bring which is complementary, and it gives all these three benefits to us. So just to tell you what agronomic benefits are those. It should enhance soil fertility, control the erosion, and also conserve both above and below ground biodiversity, which means not only the crop species or the tree species, but also the insects and the pests, which are all complementary together or beneficial together. Then longer productive lifespan for the cocoa trees in the system. That's what is our objective. Then economic is reduce the exposure to product and income risks, hence greater profitability than a single cropping system. So when you have more number of diversified cocoa farm or a diversified agroforestry system, then the farmer can get diversified income, just not depending on a monocrop. Then reduction in production cost, because you don't have to really manage the farm like weeding, etc. And this diversification takes care of all of that. The environmental is it reduces the global warming through carbon sequestration, thus mitigating the threats of climate change such as drought, flood, heat waves, etc. It also regenerates and conserves the forestry species, which means afforestation. And deforestation, we all know, is actually resulting in global warming. So this is something is not only a threat to cocoa, but it is a threat to the human species. And we all have heard in COP26 what was discussed. So this is a slide which shows that it was studies done in 1974. So this is something not new, and then it was adapted again in 2008, which shows that when there is no shade and no fertilizer, your cocoa yields are going to go down. Then when there is no shade and no fertilizer, it really goes very, very steeply down. With shade and fertilizer, you can see that there is an increase in the cocoa production. While with shade and no fertilizer, although it's not reaching to that brim, but at least you have some increase in cocoa yield. Then there was a study by Andreas et al. 2018, and I would actually encourage everyone to read this manuscript. This is really very interesting, where it showed that, this is related to the cocoa swollen shoot virus disease symptom. If you see that this figure A, you will see that if you go here, when there is a shade of 45%, there is a little increase in the, there is CSSVD, so it goes down. Here, it starts coming up. That means the crop is combating it. And then between 45 to 76 is the range, should be the shade. And then at 54% is the optimum where it starts picking up and it starts combating the disease. Again, for the yield itself, also if you see, this is where it starts going up and becomes almost like flat and coming down. But between 34 to 53%, you can see some kind of increase in yield, and again, it goes down. So shade trees does have, or agroforestry system does have some kind of value to not only reducing the CSSVD, but also to contribute to the yield increase. I like this slide, how do we do cocoa sustainability? And there is always a factor called genotype, environment, and management. And I put the next M, which is the markets, institutions, policies, and gender, because these are also becoming very important. And I liked Fabrizio when he said that we just cannot look at one component of controlling the disease. We have to really have high quality planting material, which is a challenge in the region to take care of these diseases and any other diseases which might be coming through because of this climate change. And this is the seed systems. And I am not sure if in cocoa there is any existence of seed systems. It's a clonally propagated crop, and there is a need for seed systems. There's a lot of virus indexing that you can actually do when you can do when you do the when you generate clean planting materials. This is commonly being followed in many clonal crops, but in cocoa, this is still not a reality. This is just showing a flow of the work that goes on, but clean planting material could be, it is one end of the value chain that can be also taken care. And then you asked a question, resistance. In case of virus, COVID-19 actually has taught most of the people who didn't even know what viruses are, what a virus can do. We all now understand what is a virus doing. The vaccination is not going to take care of the disease itself or the new variants coming, but it can make us to actually tolerate the disease. And same with resistance in cocoa genotypes. There are studies which shows that with breeding and resistance, there could be 30% reduction of the disease. But if we use agroforestry system or barrier crops and many clean planting material, the reduction can go up to almost 85%. So this has to be a holistic approach. And yes, for breeding, we need to have advanced phenotyping as well as omics approaches to take care of this disease. And we need to see how we also build the capacity and training of all the students or the stakeholders, because most of the time what we see is that cocoa has a long gestation crop. So many of the researchers, they lose their interest, or even the farmers in this region, at least in Nigeria. I know that Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana, the situation may be a little better, but we need to also look at the other countries that are in the region, as well as the countries that are becoming amenable for cocoa production, that we need to really make sure that whatever is being done, capacity strengthening should be one of the key to this. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ranjana, for this very comprehensive, short but comprehensive presentation. So we are very happy to hear that agroforestry, as someone used to say, is an old practice with new recent application in cocoa, but we are gaining more and more knowledge. So I'm so happy that we were able to share some metrics, because one of the questions about cocoa agroforestry is that we are missing metrics. We don't have figures, we don't have numbers. We don't really know how to measure the benefits of agroforestry in cocoa in terms of disease management, for instance. So the question we can also ask ourselves, how is the fight against cocoa soil and should work on the ground? We can have all those tools and methods, but what is really happening on the ground? So I'm very delighted to introduce the next two speakers. There are two distinguished reps of the public sector. We have, one of them is Mr. Joseph Kwasi Kwame, who is the director of the Coffee and Cocoa Department at FICA. Joseph has coordinated the development of the National cocoa swirl and shoot strategy in Côte d'Ivoire from 2010 to 2018. So he does know what he's talking about. And the next speaker is Mr. Farouk Kwansanyame. He is the Deputy Executive Director of the Cocoa Health Extension Unit in Ghana. Farouk works with the Ghana Cocoa Board as the Deputy Director in charge. I have some echo. In charge of things, among other things, of the cocoa rehabilitation program. So both are really involved in the national strategy to control the cocoa swirl and shoot. So let's start with Joseph Kwame. I will ask the question to Joseph in French so that we'll avoid some misunderstanding due to the translation. Joseph, bienvenue sur ce panel. Que pouvez-vous nous dire sur la stratégie nationale?
Hello, Mr. Kwame. Can you tell us a few words about the national strategy to fight against the CSSV in the Ivory Coast, and what have been the lessons learned in terms of sustainability? Can you hear me? Yes, thank you so much for having invited me. I would like to share with you our national strategy to fight the CSSV. Before we start, I would like to tell you that the cocoa swirl and shoot off disease started in 2008. The strategy has been financed by the Coffee Council. Then there are two phases. There is the pilot phase and the execution, the implementation phase. I am going to talk to you about this phase. Why is this strategy so important to fight CSSV? Well, as I said, there are two phases. The first one started in 2012 and the second in 2013. The second phase is the execution phase, where we elaborated our strategy. That one went from 2013 to 2017. Our strategy against cocoa swirl and shoot disease was based on the diversity. Next slide, please. What is the context of these strategies and what's the content? Well, it is to help the producers. They need to be able to apply the best practices. The best practices were elaborated and tested by the center. And then we developed measures to help the farmers when the plants were infected. These agricultural practices were developed to help the farmers to manage the cocoa swirl and shoot disease, so that they knew what to do. There was also the Conseil Agricole, who helped the farmers with the revenues. There are also private local operators. They received the training to help to get rid of the infected plants. They help out to plant new banana trees and other trees, so that the farmers, however, could have some revenue. And these strategies help us to understand how important it is to help the farmers to get some revenue, because they need to have some minimum substance living revenue. And the new cultures, like the banana trees, they were planted for about 1,980,000 CFA. It is very important as well to train the farmers so that they know what the best practices are. 87% of the producers were trained, and they apply BPA. So the best practices. Also, we have lots of women who are working in this field, and they were trained. It is very important so that the plots during 3 years are well maintained. And then when we did these tests with replanting new cultures, then we saw two things. We saw that if the farmers, if they are not accompanied by experts, then it's not necessarily the best thing, because they are replanting trees which then are affected by insects, and then these insects transport the disease to other coffee plants. They have bad practices, and these practices degrade the situation. So it's very important to accompany them. And also, there's this migration where the forest resources. So this is happening when the farmer is not accompanied. So when he's not mentored, he needs mentoring with good practices and with good techniques. And if we help him, if we support him that way with all of the resources, then the situation is totally different. In other words, if you have your cocoa plantation, then not all the plots are affected. So if you are the producer, and if you have an idea what's happening in your fields, and you see what zones you can use for the cacao, and then what zones of your plantations you can use for other plants, so that you always have a revenue. So with reason, we help them to make this division of the fields. This, of course, can improve the livelihood of the producer, because this way he has other fruit trees, other trees which give them revenues. And then there is also the possibility to have a more diversification of the revenue of the producers. You optimize the soil, and you help him with the plants. Now, what is here the challenge? The challenge is to find plants, trees, which you can use for replantation, so that the ground is not without any revenue for the farmer. So it's important to be able to replant. With regards to revenue sources, you need to manage the lands. You need to optimize the plants which you plant in the first year, so that these plants or trees, that they will bring up a revenue for the years to come.
C'est pas grave, si vous pouvez juste conclure.
We are going to jump here a few slides. We have to be able to develop agroforestry. In order to be successful with this, you have to go slowly, step by step. You cannot just do it from today until tomorrow, because that would be a constraint. You have to be able to identify all the species, all the trees, which are accepted by the producers. And the second thing is that you also need to learn from the experience from these producers. We don't hear much of them. These cacao producers, very often we always think that there are negative things to say, but these producers, they also have lots of positive experiences. And the university scientists, they worked with these producers, and it was shown that lots of these plantations are planted using traditional practices, and these traditional practices are actually very positive, and they need to be used more often. We can actually put them to scale. They should be put to scale. This is about what I wanted to tell you. This study showed a good social, economic, and environmental integration in using agroforestry practices. You can never impose some trees to be planted by these producers which they don't want to have or which they don't know. But no, you have to sensitize the farmers and to plant the right trees so that we all together can help fight the swollen shoot disease. We saw it's very important what type of trees are being planted. Thank you.
That's why we are in this session. We want to understand how we can use cocoa agroforestry to kind of limit the impact of the swollen shoot disease on the environment. So these are very practical advice, very practical suggestion that Joseph just made. One of them is to assess and select the tree species that farmers will be willing to introduce in their farm. So let's now move to the next presenter and hear from Farouk what is done in Ghana in their national strategy, and also what are the lessons learned in there, and maybe a few words on the joint strategy between the two countries. Farouk, welcome to the panel. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Virginie. I am to look at the cocoa rehabilitation program in Ghana. And then first of all, we'll look at the nature of the CSSVD, especially when it comes to coverage. Then we'll look at the implementation strategy, we'll look at some achievements. Then once there is a policy in place by the government of the country, that is Ghana, to maintain the rehabilitated areas for 2 years, what is the exit strategy once we are out of the program? Then we'll look at a joint strategy between Ghana and then Cote d'Ivoire. So we start with the nature of the CSSVD. Normally, for us to be able to know the extent of the disease, we used geographical positioning system, that is GPS device, in measuring this disease. So between 2006 and 2017, we realized that out of a cocoa area of 1.9 million hectares, 17% was affected by the cocoa swollen shoot virus disease, of which majority was in the Western North region, and Western North region alone had 42.12% of the cocoa area affected by the cocoa swollen shoot virus disease. Then we had money from AFDB. This fund was to rehabilitate 156,400 hectares of this cocoa swollen shoot virus disease. So for us to be able to start this program, we would have to do a resurvey. So we surveyed again from 2017 to 2021. And now as we speak, the disease has spread from 17% to 30%. So what it tells you is that it's a viral disease as far as we are concerned, and it spreads once you don't put in mechanisms to be able to control it. Then Western North alone, that hitherto between 2006 and 2017 had 42%. In the year 2021, 76% of their cocoa is affected by the cocoa swollen shoot virus disease. So we are now rehabilitating the cocoa swollen shoot virus disease areas. The strategy that we are putting in place is as much as possible to make sure that we do block treatment. Block treatment here means that when we come to a contiguous area that is affected by cocoa swollen shoot virus disease, we would have to cut everything. We don't leave any farm in between, because if we don't do that, studies tell us that once you cut some farms and then you leave others and then you replant, there is a high likelihood that the virus would still move from where the disease used to be, to come to where you have rehabilitated. So that is the kind of strategy that we are using. Another strategy is that once we have two regions sharing borders and then having the disease at the borders, we make sure that one region, does the cutting or treatment inwards, while the other also does it at the other end. That is another strategy that is being used to make sure that at least the disease is controlled and it doesn't spread after we have rehabilitated the swollen shoot areas. Another strategy that we use is the involvement of the private sector. When it comes to our end, normally when it comes to cutting down, we will call treatment, because you would cut the swollen shoot disease tree, then you apply arboricide, which will make sure that it kills the stump so that every virus that is in it is also killed. That particular activity is done by the private sector. By they doing that, what it means is that they would have to purchase chainsaw machines. They are responsible for fuel and lubricant. They are responsible for the maintenance of the machines. Then the workers, the machine operators that do the cutting of that cocoa swollen shoot virus disease trees are also the responsibility of the private sector. We quantify all these things and then pay them as such. Then Cocoa Board now deals with, when it comes to the chemicals that is used in destroying the stump, that what we call arboricides, that is the responsibility of Cocoa Board to provide. The technical assistance that would have to make sure that everything is done as planned, it's also recruited by Cocoa Board. When it comes to measurement of the farms, for us to be able to pay compensation and other things like that, that is also done by Cocoa Board. Then supervision and then technical backstopping is also done by us. I have already mentioned the back-to-back and then the block treatment when I was showing the maps. We pay compensation to the farmers because we feel that, they have their livelihood being taken away from them. So a compensation would have to be paid to them. Another thing is that compensation is also paid to the landowners. The landowners, because in Ghana, once you have acquired a land and then you are planting cocoa on it, the agreement is that once there is no cocoa tree on that land, then you lose that particular right that you had with the landowner. So then the landowner would want to charge you before you do any replanting on such, farms. We have taken that upon ourselves because the farmer is already in hardship. If we would have to, help the farmer out, and then the landowner wants more money from, the farmer, then that one, Cocoa Board and the government of the country is also taking that one upon itself to make sure that we settle all bills that the landowner would also want. Now, per the program that we have done, one of the areas that we had a lot of issue is the temporary shade. Temporary shade provides, shade for the young seedlings until the permanent shade, that is the forest trees, take over. We had a lot of, challenges acquiring them last year because we had to cut almost 36,000 hectares of land. And we had challenges getting enough plantain suckers. So this time around, we are using technology that is plantain suckers that will be acquired through bud multiplication technique and then split comb to be able to come out with around 144 million hectares in the year 2021-2022 planting season. So the achievement, as I have mentioned, we have treated an area of 36,239.31. We have now been able to plant an area of 26,524.23 with plantain, with temporary shade, and then the forest trees. Normally the program would want us to use plantain suckers as temporary shade. But then because we had a little hardship with plantain suckers, we brought in pawpaw and then gliricidia to still provide temporary shade. So all the areas that we have planted with cocoa, we have, either plantain suckers, pawpaw, or gliricidia providing temporary shade. In a hectare that is replanted with cocoa, we also have between 15 and 18 forest trees planted to make sure that that becomes the permanent shade once the temporary shade is done with the work that it's supposed to do. So far, out of the 36,239.31 area that we have rehabilitated, we have 2,596.16 of them fruiting. And these are over 2 years. So if they are over 2 years, then what it means is that we would have to hand them over to the farmers. That is the kind of policy that we are implementing. But you would all agree with me that if a farmer had, let's say, 6 hectares of cocoa farm, and he used almost 6 years to plant them, then Cocoa Board comes in and then rehabilitate this farm within a year. And then after the second year, we are handing over. There's a high possibility the farmer will not be able to cater for, such a large area. Because of that, we are bringing in the private sector to come and then come into an agreement with these farmers and then take over with a certain kind of agreement that Cocoa Board, the legal department, the farmers themselves will all agree and then they sign. So that going into the future, once Cocoa Board wins itself out in the second year, the enterprises or the private sector will take charge of it until it gets into full fruition from 4 years, 5 years ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Farouk, my apologies. We are almost 15 minutes before the end of the session. Okay. So we need to rush so that the other speaker can also. So if you can just tell us a little bit what is really happening with the joint strategy. Yeah, please. Thank you.
Yes. So about 36,000 youths have also been employed. And then with the exit strategy, that is what I have explained. Once we want to give the farm to the farmer after the 2 years. Now with a joint strategy between Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, there has been knowledge that is shared on the extent of the CSSVD. Because of that, at our borders in the western part of Ghana and the eastern part of Cote d'Ivoire, we are doing the back-to-back carton because now we know the extent of the disease in Ghana, and Cote d'Ivoire also knows theirs. And then we think that once we do back-to-back, as we are doing in Ghana, will help us. Then when it comes to sustainable cocoa production, promotion of agroforestry practices between both Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire is very paramount. Because of that, I have mentioned that we have agreed that between 15 and then 18 forest trees should be planted per hectare. There's a lot of information sharing between CREG and then CNRA. That's, the research wings of both Ghana and then Cote d'Ivoire. We have both assessed AFDB loan to be able to control this CSSVD program together. So the joint strategy between Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, that is what we are also doing because there's a technical and a production committee that is coming together from both Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire to work together to make sure that we make sure that we bring this CSSVD menace under control. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you, Farouk. We are really in the ground. We are ground rooted on the issue of CSSV. And these are very practical things. And if we can answer to the question, what the virus is teaching us on sustainability is that it's not just about science. Science alone cannot solve the issue of CSSV. We also need to work on the ecological balance. And the cocoa agroforestry offers us this opportunity to effectively interlink all those challenges and all those opportunities together. And on that note, I would like to introduce the next speaker. He's one of my friends. His name is Florent Claire. He's the head of partnership for sustainability in West Africa for UPL. So I know they are doing a lot of work, and he will tell us how all the work they are doing can be linked to the fight against the swollen shoe. So Florent, the floor is yours. Please, if you can use 5 minutes so that we can ask 1 or 2 questions to the speakers. Thank you so much.
I'll do my best. Thank you, Virginie. It's a pleasure to be here and very happy to share some of the work that UPL is leading on cocoa sustainability and swollen shoot control in particular. So let me share my screen right now. Presentation mode. Okay. You should now be able to see it. All right. So my first point is to give you a glimpse on UPL. So UPL is a 50-year-old company, one of the top 5 agro input company in the world, and our expertise on cocoa comes from 35 years of presence in West and Central Africa, with the distribution of an extensive portfolio of inputs, including crop protection and biosolution products, and a history of tailor-made projects with value chain partners. So you can see here our sustainability journey started in 2010 with the first stewardship training sessions on safe and efficient use of agrochemical products. This program is called Applique Bien in Côte d'Ivoire and Guso Papa in Ghana, for those who have experienced it. We have then adhered to all major cocoa industry programs and associations and aligned our strategy and development efforts to them. So in 2015, we launched the first ever biostimulant on cocoa called Bonsai, and have since then continued to develop new solutions under UPL ProNutiva program, which objective is to combine biosolutions with conventional crop protection in order to reduce residues on the cocoa beans harvested, and also to protect the environment, in particular the auxiliary fauna or the beneficials, which is key to control swollen shoot virus progression. It has been mentioned several times. Another key activity I would like to mention in my presentation for today's discussion is the setup of large-scale income diversification programs based on food crops. And since 2019, in collaboration with major cocoa industry partners, we have supported the setup of more than 200 food crop plots and reached out to more than 6,500 farmers with both trainings and inputs on food crops. So my second slide is focusing on the biosolutions and what biosolutions mean in the context of IPM programs and resilience. IPM stands for Integrated Pest Management. So over the last 6 years, it's important to understand that we have been continuously investing in research and development of new products, offering good pest and disease control, whilst also preserving the environment. And we're really living a true revolution this decade in this domain. So we think biosolutions today offer a critical route for cocoa farms' environmental resilience and biodiversity protection. Biosolutions are really organic solutions that are able to control pest and disease with new mode of actions and active ingredients. So in this way, we will be able to tackle the ecological imbalance that also leads to the spread of the swollen shoot virus disease, as we have heard in previous presentations. It's important to preserve biodiversity to also control the progression of the virus. So today, we pride ourselves for having a complete portfolio of organic solutions to control major disease and pests affecting cocoa farms. So you can see here on the right side of the slide that we have registered 2 biofungicides and 2 bioinsecticides are also under registration in both Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana. So with these kind of solution, we're able to not only control the swollen shoot vectors, the mealybug in particular, but also indirectly through the sustain of insect biodiversity balance. So these products also help to preserve the beneficials. So these solutions should be used in the context of integrated pest management, with conventional crop protection products only used in last resort now, if we want to have the best control over swollen shoot virus progression. Now, my last slide is where I want to make the demonstration that with the combination of both biostimulation and crop diversification, we can offer a sustainable economic model for farm rehabilitation in the case where it is, for example, severely affected by swollen shoots. Okay, this is really not an easy task to find a sustainable economic model that will be accepted and acceptable to cocoa smallholder farmers. So the idea here is to intensify cocoa production on one side, okay, in the areas maybe where the disease is not present yet. And on the other side of the farm, the idea is to diversify the incomes where the cocoa cannot grow anymore. Let's try to grow other food crops, like was suggested also by my predecessors. So here, with the use of the bonsai biostimulant, okay, it's the cocoa biostimulant alone, we can get up to 40% yield increase. It's not up to, it's actually in average, okay, on any type of cocoa farm. That's what we have measured for the last 7 years, okay? And with veggies program, food crop diversification program, we have track records already of 10 times return on investment, okay? You can see on the table on the top right corner here of the slide, figures data that was collected from the Nyankopa project in Ghana from this season. And it just shows that we can get a return on investment of up to 10 times, okay? So these are the two crucial elements of my demonstration here. Now, the conclusion is in this graph at the bottom right corner of the slide, okay? This graph is an economic model of a 10-hectare cocoa farm, okay? We took 10 hectares to make it simple, where 25% of the surface has been put under rehabilitation, okay? So the rehabilitated area, sorry, is the green line here that you can see, okay? So it starts from 0 revenue because these are very young trees and starts yielding from year 4 up to year 10, okay? Now, the pink line is the maize and plantain revenues that we used for intercropping, okay? In the part where you are replanting new cocoa trees, okay? You are rejuvenating your farm, but in the 2-3 first years, you have enough space to grow maize and to also plant plantain trees, okay, for shade. And from this, you can get the pink line revenues, okay? Now, the other 75% of the farm are under intensification, okay? Simple intensification with both use of good agric practices and biostimulation. And this one is the yellow line, okay? So we show a slow but steady progression also in terms of the revenue. Now, if you do the sum of these three, yellow plus pink plus green, okay, you get the blue line, okay? The blue line is what the farmer is actually going to earn in total for his 10-hectare farm. It could be 1 hectare farm, okay? It's the same ratio. And this blue line, you should compare it with the do nothing scenario here in purple, all right? So what we're showing here to conclude is that this model allows sustained revenue for the farmer from year 1, hence this theory. In theory, we don't need for long-term financing for rehabilitation programs. So that's what we are proving here. And more importantly, we're improving social acceptance of national rehabilitation campaigns that can sometimes be traumatic for smallholder farmers.
Yeah.
And lastly, forest protection, of course, because you don't need to move your cocoa farm to a new site if you're able to grow more on the same cocoa farm. Thank you, and open for question.
Thank you so much, Florent. Oh, so much information. I like this economic model, a kind of financial model to see how cocoa soil can become an opportunity for a farmer to gain more. Because when we look at CSSV, we think about someone said this is the HIV of cocoa. No, it can be an opportunity to rejuvenate a farm and to earn more income. We have 3 minutes left and maybe 2 or 3 additional minutes. So we cannot get out of this session without tackle this point about how do we have some public-private partnership to really make the cocoa sustainable in terms of cocoa swirl and shoot virus. So maybe I will get back to Jeanne and to Farouk. The first question really in 2 minutes, how can we build a momentum around agroforestry in cocoa? This question is for Jeanne. What can we do to have this agroforestry issue really, really be implemented? Since here we are discussing, but how can we build a momentum? If Jeanne is still with us, can you 1 minute just share your thoughts with us? Jeanne? Otherwise, I will turn to Ranjana because I know she's the one who presented things on cocoa agroforestry. So Ranjana, please, how can we build some public partnership and a momentum around agroforestry?
Yeah, this is a very good question. And I think as many of us know, cocoa swollen shoot virus disease cannot be resolved if it is not a holistic approach. And as studies are being done and people are knowing that agroforestry seems to be the way forward, just not to combat the disease, but also to diversify the cocoa farm and diversify the income of the farmers. Most of the cocoa farmers are losing interest to continue with the farming in cocoa, just like monocropping. So I think this will need a lot of research to be done, at least which crops are complementary to each other, bringing randomly the trees or the vegetables or agricultural crops may again bring another disease or pest that may actually break down the entire system. So instead of that, this really needs some kind of research, and that research has to be done in different agroecologies. What will work for Cote d'Ivoire in one even in Cote d'Ivoire, there are different agroecologies. So what will work in one agroecology will not work in another agroecology. Exactly. So this has to be very clearly studied. There may be agroecologies across the region which are similar. So we need to first of all define the cocoa agroecologies, and it's not difficult. It has been done in other crops. So
thank you. We need to wrap. So we'll continue this discussion. We try to have another webinar. So I want to thank all the partners. One question that I had is, what are the public sector expecting from the private sector to really build this momentum on agroforestry? But we have another opportunity to discuss that. So let's
give funding. Sorry, in 2 words, give funding to the research, and we will give you the results. That's
exactly. All. So thank you all, and thank you to the audience for attending this session. And thanks so much to all of us.